Greetings. We continue with our teaching. Last week we studied about seasons of life, and this week we'll be studying about embracing God's process. And what is a process? A process is a series of actions that take place over a short or an extended period of time towards accomplishing a certain task or a particular thing. You see, unless we understand God's process, we cannot embrace it. Unless we understand some dynamics on the process of how God works in our lives in different seasons, we will never embrace them. And today we are studying from the book of John, chapter 5. I'll read verse 1 to 8. And then I'll skip and read 13 to 14. John chapter 5, verse 1 to 8. And then I'll read verse 13 to 14. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and the Jews went up to Jerusalem. Now there in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. In this lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped first after the stirring of the water was made well of whatever disease he had. Verse 5. Now a certain man was there who had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, and knew that he had already been in that condition for a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered, "Sir, I have no man to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up. But when I'm coming, another steps before me." Jesus said to him, "Rise up and take your bed and walk." Verse 13 and 14. But the one who had been healed did not know who did it, for Jesus had withdrawn, a multitude being in that place. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you have been made well. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you." I'm reading from New King James Version. So when we are embracing God's process, and in reflection of this passage, what are some things we can learn about the process of God, especially in seasons of prolonged suffering? And the first lesson I learned about God's process is that human efforts do not fix spiritual problems. If a problem is spiritual, human effort cannot fix it. Only God can fix a spiritual problem. This man's illness was a spiritual problem, and we learned that from verse 13 and 14. 14 said, when Jesus had another encounter with him later, he told him not to sin no more, because something worse may happen to him. His illness had a cause, which was sin. And before I proceed, I want to say that not all illnesses or suffering is caused by sin. When Jesus approaches this man, he asks him question to gauge his understanding of his situation and the process of illness. But from the conversation, Jesus asks him, "Do you want to be healed?" And this man is already convinced that his lack of healing has come because he has inadequate human help. That has kept him from his miracle of healing. And that's understandable, because when they were getting to the pool, somebody had to push them and he couldn't get somebody. But do you realize that after suffering for a long time, he blames people and he blames himself? Listen to the answer he gives in verse 7 when Jesus asked him whether he wants to get healed. He said, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred, but while I'm coming, another steps before me." He blames people. I have nobody to put me in the pool. He blames himself. While I'm coming, another steps before me. Like, I'm just slow. I need to rush myself, or somebody needs to push me there. When we suffer for extended periods of time, it is easy to blame others or blame ourselves because of the suffering. It is easy. And unless we understand the process, how it works, we cannot get out of there embracing God. We cannot get out of a suffering with a clear understanding of God's process. You see, God is like a well. And we know or understand a well, or a source of water. When you go to the tap is a channel through which we get water from the source. And God uses people as a tap. And it's easy to be upset that the tap is not bringing water. But because we don't make a connection that God is the source. People are just a resource. They are just a way that God uses to solve our problems. And God is saying, do not create dependence on men or the resources that I put around you. I'm the source. Look up to me. Have you been in that situation, or are you there where you feel like, oh, my problems are probably attached to somebody. I wish they intervened for me, or I wish I was a little quicker. Last week we learned that God ordains all seasons. Everything happening around us as believers, He either did it or allowed it. Therefore, in extended or short periods of suffering, always remember there is a spiritual dynamic. Do not get fixated on people that are not helping you. Human effort does not fix spiritual problems. So how do I respond to suffering then? A repentant heart. When you read Psalm 51:17, it says, God will not despise a contrite heart. A humble, a repentant heart God honors. How do I also approach suffering? Depend on God. This could be a good memory verse. Isaiah 26 verse 4 says, trust in the Lord forever, for God is an everlasting rock. No matter what you are going through, always remember to trust God, because He is an everlasting rock. He cannot be moved. And what is the second lesson we can learn about God's process during periods of or seasons of extended suffering? Human activity does not rush God's timing or God's intervention. See, this man had been having this infirmity for 38 years, almost 4 decades. People came to the pool, received their healing, and left him there waiting. And it happened over and over. And when Jesus comes to the pool, verse 6, Jesus is aware of his condition. Verse 6 says, when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been in that condition a long time, he said to him, do you want to be well? He knew he had been in that condition for a long time. Jesus was aware of his long wait. What was happening around him did not put pressure on God to rush. You know what adds anxiety to us when we are waiting is what is happening around us. Maybe you are waiting with other people and their breakthroughs came. And it's been 10 years since so-and-so got their breakthrough. It's been 20 years. It's been 38 years. We were waiting with somebody and they already moved on. They bought their home. They got a car. They got married. They got kids. Whatever it is. And you go, boy, I can't wait any longer. You know, God knows you have waited for a long time. When God time comes, your victory will be exceptional. It will be God's timing specifically for you. His healing, even after waiting, was special. Jesus himself performed the miracle. And then he did not even have to get in the pool like everyone else. Do not let the victories of others overwhelm you in the season of waiting. When your time comes, God will intervene specifically for you. See, Psalm 27 verse 14 says, "Wait for the Lord and be strong. Let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord." God has a specific intervention and timing for each need in your life. It doesn't matter how long you've waited. It doesn't matter what others have experienced. Your experience is unique and God treats you as a unique suffering. I encourage you in your season. When your time comes, it will be an intervention specific for you because you are special in the eyes of God. As I conclude, I say human efforts do not fix spiritual problems. Always remember there is a spiritual dynamic in suffering and depend on God. The second thing, human activity does not rush God's timing. Be strong and courageous in your waiting. When your time comes, God will be specific to your need and He will intervene. God bless you.